The gangster film genre depicts the rise to power and status, but eventual demise, of a criminal protagonist usually involved in some kind of illegal business, according to Thompson and Wardwell's film history textbook. According to our film history textbook, after reaching the top of the criminal hierarchy and acquiring luxurious possessions, characterized by expensive cars, houses, and clothing, the gangster's life of crime is usually interrupted by a shootout with either the law enforcement or the rival gangsters after him. In this video essay, we will look at Edwin S. Porter's The Great Train Robbery from 1903 and Howard Hawks' Scarface, The Shame of the Nation from 1932, and compare their depiction of the gangster protagonist. Widely recognized as one of the earliest films to contribute to the origins of the Western film genre, The Great Train Robbery also provides examples of the aspects that characterize the gangster archetype within the gangster film genre. This short, silent film follows a group of criminals who board a train to terrorize and attack the passengers and workers in order to steal their valuables. The authorities are alerted and begin to chase them down. They soon catch up to the criminals enjoying their stolen possessions, and a shootout ensues which ends with all of the criminals getting shot and killed. Although The Great Train Robbery focused on a group of criminals rather than on just an individual, as is typical for a film under the gangster genre, it demonstrated the high amount of physical and gun violence that the gangster typically partakes in. Killing others or allowing others to get killed has become the test that gangsters must pass in order to achieve the status and power they crave. The gangster must lose parts of his morality in order to obtain what he wants, as is shown by how the criminals must kill the people stopping them from getting away with what they stole. As one of the few scenes to have color added, the importance of the downfall of the criminals is highlighted as if to indicate its endurance as a signature aspect of the gangster archetype. Much like the criminals in The Great Train Robbery, the gangster is brought down by their enemies and tragically loses everything they had gained. The corruption of the gangster's morality through crime, self-destructive behavior, and greed seem to overwhelm the gangster character and soul to the point where perhaps death is the only possible redemption. The Great Train Robbery has contributed to the aggressive and tragic qualities of the gangster archetype. Gangster films after it have been inspired to personalize these qualities for their gangster protagonists, as we will see in Scarface, The Shame of the Nation.
Scarface, The Shame of the Nation, 1932, is a very different film from most of director Howard Hawks' productions, and that's mostly thanks to its intriguing protagonist. It takes a dramatically different approach than The Great Train Robbery to characterizing its protagonist. Whereas The Great Train Robbery never focused on any specific gangster protagonist, instead focused on the actions of groups of individuals, Scarface is a character study of its charismatic yet brutal protagonist, Tony Comante. Comante, who is an aggressive and controlling sadist, is looking to consolidate his control over the gangsters of Chicago, no matter the cost. It works, at first. Comante alternates between his friendly and cheerful demeanor and his sadistic side, most clearly in his relationship with his sister. After seeing his sister flirt with some fellas, Comante falls into an indiscriminate rage, choking her out and yelling at her. Ostensibly, he does it to protect his sister, but it seems pretty clear that the real reason he's so upset is because he's afraid her flirting will hurt his reputation among other gangsters. When Tony Comante swings back to his jovial and charismatic mood, he shows himself to be a very likable protagonist.
Hi, puppy.
Hello.
Hey, what's all the time biting you? You afraid of me?
Well, that outfit's enough to give anybody the yips.
Nice, huh? I got 3 more. Different colors.
This dynamic is present throughout much of the film and makes up much of the movie's greater message when Tony Comante's aggressive and sadistic side finally leads directly to his death, when he murders his sister's fiancé and the police finally catch up to him. In the context of later gangster movies, Tony Comante's character has become something of an archetype, and movies often share the same characteristics that Scarface exhibits. Character study in gangster movies has become very common, in Scorsese movies like Taxi Driver and The Wolf of Wall Street, or even in horror movies like American Psycho. But unlike later gangster films, the original Scarface is not at all interested in glamorizing the hectic and savage life of American gangsters. The movie begins with a title that explicitly states that the creators had no intent of creating such a film, and throughout the movie there is very little extravagance or luxury shown in every set, even though Comante is explicitly getting richer. But the protagonist is not the only character archetype that we can find easily in gangster movies. Another is the archetype of the clownish grunt that Camonte's secretary, Angelo, typifies. Angelo, who is dumb as a rock and who has bad enough memory that he can't even remember to try and get people's names who are telephoning Camonte's office, is a very well-known trope in gangster movies. It's common enough that whenever mentioned, an image of an Italian gangster dressed in a pinstripe suit and with a Brooklyn accent immediately comes to mind.
You heard what the boss said. Let me have it.
Oh, okay, but,
That's better.
I let him have it, boss, just like you said.
Both The Great Train Robbery and Scarface, Shame of the Nation, as early gangster movies, had a tremendous influence on the films that came after them. The Great Train Robbery, with its silent but evocative characters and tragic ending, came to determine the way gangster movies would appear generations after its creation. And Scarface, with its archetypical characters, would turn out to be just as influential.